He hasn't evolved his game enough when he's not scoring to really help them and to be a valued player. And part of it too, and I've been asked this a lot, is, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the year as well. I think a lot of it last year was playing with Marchand and Bergeron too, and that
Yeah.
brought out the best in him. And I think you're seeing now without them that he can't put up the same kind of numbers and he can't play the same way that he did last year when he had them. Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. If you purchase a premium membership, you get all of my NHL and Bruins writings sent straight to your inbox. All the Bruins and NHL content goes right to your inbox for you to read, mostly post-game reports, off-day practice stuff. I also write for BostonSportsJournal.com with people like Greg Bedard, Mike Giardi. You can find my columns after pretty much every Bruins game, breaking down what I saw, what happened there. So check that out as well, and get a good membership going there. You got to pay to read Haggs these days, Evan. That's what it's all about. With me today is a friend and colleague, Evan Marinofsky from the New England Hockey Journal. We're gonna engage in a little Boston Bruins mailbag, Pucks with Haggs mailbag episode.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah,
And
I
by the way,
answered.
Hags, I'm with you on this now. You got to pay to read me too. Like, it's you and I are in the same boat on this. You
Well,
gotta pay. You
membership
gotta
has
pay a
its
little bit.
privileges, Evan. Well, you have to be worth the premium membership, and I'm going to say Evan Marinofsky and Joe Haggerty are worth premium memberships. We're worth.
I, you a little bit more than me, but I agree.
I think you're right there, buddy. You do a great job covering the prep school stuff. That stuff is much harder to come by as far as the high school stock hockey and all that stuff goes. I know a lot of people are willing to spend for like the Hockey Journal, for the neutral zone stuff that those guys do. Like all that stuff is its own thing where you can't get any of those things anywhere else, any of that great kind of coverage of that stuff. So Evan does a great job. Definitely check him out at the Hockey Journal. I do see him at hockey rinks all over New England. He is on the beat and all over the place. What are you working on now, Evan? Anything good?
Oh God, when we get off this, I have to do some MIAA rankings, which always those get viewed like crazy. I mean, it's incredible.
Nice.
I'm doing a James Hagen's profile, kind of an in-depth look at his life. That's going to be fun. Next week, there's some MIAA tournaments, which will be good, and then there's a couple prep school tournaments, but it's pretty much done until like early January. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the last weekend where I saw you was the prep school holiday tournaments. That's like the
Yeah.
biggest thing. So that was fun. A lot of good hockey,
Yep.
but a lot of good hockey.
Yep.
But it was good and it was fun. And saw you at Seb's, so it's always a
Yeah, that,
pleasure.
that Brunswick
Anytime.
team was very good. That kid, I don't know what his
Yeah,
name, number 15. He was excellent, that line.
Sean Gibbons. He's
There you
committed
go.
to, I think, or West Point, one of the two. I don't want to mess it up, but one of the two, and he's very good. Yeah, Brunswick, I have them at like number 2 in prep hockey now. They've moved all the way up because of that performance. So good
Yeah,
for them.
they were
Yeah.
impressive. Is my good buddy John Missouri's Arlington team going to be in the MIAA rankings?
They are number 9 for me. I don't know what they'll be today. I have to look at the results they've had over the last like 2 weeks, but they're always, it's funny. John Missouri is always like, we're not good. We're too young. And I'm like, John, you're in it every year. Like
You're right.
you say this every year. It's not, like you guys are good. You're Arlington. So I love Missouri like that. But first, Hanks, before we dive into Bruins mailbag stuff, I want to show some for people who can see or watching on YouTube. I'm in my
Yep.
childhood bedroom
Yes.
back home for the holidays. I was showing you the things around my room, like my Wiggles blanket and
Show him the Wiggles blanket again,
the
Evan.
Wiggles blanket.
People got to
Oh,
see that for the
the
on the
Wiggles
air.
blanket. I want to make sure this is from when I was little, and I don't have many blankets here anymore. Look at that! Isn't that incredible?
That is a true page of Evan Marinofsky's childhood right there.
It's Evan Marinofsky lore. When I was little, I was the biggest Wiggles fanatic you could find.
Oh my God.
And I mean, this like fruit salad, yummy, yummy. I mean, a song has not been written that's been better since. But this is hockey related. People will like this. Bruins play the Winnipeg Jets tonight. Now you have a son. I
Yep.
was a little older than him when I asked for this, but when the Winnipeg Jets entered the NHL, I loved their jersey. And because I was in 7th grade, my nanny, my grandmother, would get me a big gift every year that was like around like, $150, $200 So I got a Winnipeg Jets jersey with my name on the back.
That's awesome.
So it was great for wearing at practice, but then once I got to 8th grade, it wasn't cool anymore. So I don't think I've worn it since, but it sat in my closet for probably like 10 years. But yeah, so I still
But it
have
made
it.
a 7th grade Evan Marinofsky very happy when he got it.
Oh, it did. It was the first time in hockey practice I was able to wear, like, one of my friends always had like a new jersey, or like, had have, like Ovechkin or Crosby. I would just, wear the typical like practice penny. And so when I was able to sport my own Winnipeg Jets 4 jersey, I was like, this is awesome, so good times. Good
I
times.
have a Star Wars hockey or jersey or two with the name Haggerty on the back. I have to
I
bust
like it.
it out for the kids at hockey practice when I run a hockey practice. I think they would get a kick out of that. That would be big with the 10-year-old set. They don't think they're too cool for that stuff yet, Evan.
Exactly. I think one of them would wear the Marinofsky jersey just because it's a Winnipeg Jets jersey. So yeah, it's more use out of it than I'm getting. So
there you go.
That's funny.
All right, let's thank our sponsors real quick because we haven't done that yet. FanDuel Sportsbook, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action. And there's also obviously Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. If you're too busy to cook, if you're looking for calorie-conscious options during this busy winter season where you're running from rink to rink like we are as hockey parents and covering hockey, head to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. All right. Before we delve into the mailbag, Evan, anything Bruins related you want to get off your chest or that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, geez. I've talked a lot about Debrusk this week in
Yeah.
different podcasts, but I'll say it here. Like,
We will get to him in
it's
the questions, by the way.
okay. I don't want
Go ahead.
to get ahead of myself.
No, it's
So
okay.
no, I think with Debrusk, it's interesting, and I want to save it for the question, but his future is becoming more and more murky because and we'll probably hit on this. I don't want to like waste too much of it, but like,
No.
to me, I look at it and say, really want to give him a long-term deal. At the same time, though, the other side of this is, are you going to trade a top 6 winger off a team that needs top 6 wingers who's first place in the Atlantic? So that's sort of the conundrum I think they have.
But I guess
I'm having to make that decision.
it's a conundrum, but I guess if is he a top 6 winger right now? He's on pace for 11 goals and 30 points. And he's making some pretty bad plays. Like obviously, he's getting picked apart and this stuff happens in overtime, right? 3-on-3 overtime, things happen fast. Like you can really pick that one apart. I take less issue with that than some of the other stuff you typically see out of Jake Debrusk, but obviously, like firing high and wide like he did with that shot that like I tell my 10-year-olds when I coach them to try to hit the net, because if you don't, that's exactly what happens. The puck rims around, goes right out, and turns into a breakaway the other way. That's exactly what happened with him. And like that shot wasn't even close. Like that was 20 feet away from the net.
Interesting. With you've probably seen the Fabian Lysell clips going around Twitter of him trying to play hero ball and just skate through defenders. Debrusk's was 1-on-1, but in overtime when it's 3-on-3, dude, don't do that. Like pull up or go around the net and set something up. Like he has speed, and we look. I'm pro going to interior ice. That's not like my point. It's that you can't just you want to in overtime, as you want to get the best shot possible, and
you want to hang on to the puck too.
Yes, puck possession is the biggest thing. So that's not the best shot, and that's not going to help you with puck possession because, he freaking missed the net by a million feet. So yeah, I mean, so my big thing is like, what do you do? Like, and I know people say just trade him, or like I was talking to Mark Dibber about this yesterday, and I think the biggest thing is, if there's a good return, if you can get a legitimate return for him, whether that's a somewhat high pick, or you can somehow package him for a long-term person you can have either on D or at forward, preferably forward, you do it. But if it's just to dump him and get like a 4th-round pick, no thanks.
Right.
Then you just play it out and you see what happens, because that's not
because
worth it.
You could I mean, I think I've talked about this a lot at the beginning of the year, with Debrusk. I felt like the writing was already on the wall at the beginning of the year that he wasn't coming back. I've already felt like this is a Torrey Krug situation where he's just too much money, too much term that he's going to make on the market because of the seasons that he's had and the season he's coming off of and the numbers he's put up. And I just don't think the Bruins want to invest that kind of money and that kind of term in this player that's too inconsistent and, you know, it has shown too many negative sort of sides to his game when things aren't going his way and the goals aren't coming. He just doesn't do enough. And he doesn't sort of he hasn't evolved his game enough when he's not scoring to really help them and to be a valued player. And part of it too, and I've been asked this a lot, is, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the year as well. I think a lot of it last year was playing with Marchand and Bergeron too, and that
Yeah.
brought out the best in him. And I think you're seeing now without them that he can't put up the same kind of numbers and he can't play the same way that he did last year when he had them. And he I'm sure got a lot more room with the puck and a lot more free and easy looks last year playing with those two than he's going to get playing with other players. And it's a better measure on, if he can drive a line, if he's a true top six forward, like what he's actually going to bring you, if you pay that kind of money to keep him. And I just don't think the Bruins want to invest that. So to your point, if they're just gonna get a draft pick and it's not going to be a high draft pick, if they were going to trade him, just keep him for the rest of the year and then trade his negotiating rights for, a fifth, sixth round pick, whatever,
Yeah.
right before free agency. That's something that you could potentially do. But I also think they're just, in a spot where they may ride it out with him and just let him leave in free agency after the year is over and see what they can get out of him, because I don't know that they're going to be able to find a player with his potential upside offensively to bring back. But like,
And he has been good in the playoffs in past years too. That's
he
another
has for
side to it.
sure. Yep. And that factors into it as well. But I just think, at this point, I think they've been on the Jake Debrusk roller coaster for, almost 10 years now. And I think the Bruins are ready to get off. And they probably feel like they've gotten the best that they're ever going to get out of him at this point, as he hits his mid to late 20s. And somebody's going to overpay for him in free agency, and they don't want to be the ones that do that. I mean, look, they made the right call on Torrey Krug, right? Like, he's a good player. I like Torrey.
Yeah.
They clearly missed him on the power play after they let him go in free agency. But like, what's going on with him in St. Louis now? They were trying to trade him before the season started. They were already trying to get out of
Yeah.
that deal from a few years ago.
And he was 30 at the time, and I remember thinking, like, even then, like, he had that point production, but it's like he's 30, he's undersized.
Yeah.
One interesting NHL trend that's taken place, I think, over the last couple of years is obviously everybody wants the big defenseman, the big, don't let you get to interior ice, but can also move the puck. Your Hampus Lindholms of the world, so to speak. Those types of defensemen teams want. Shea Theodore, those guys. It's very interesting though how the value of the undersized defenseman has just completely plummeted. I mean, remember, maybe I'm wrong, but like 5 or 6 years ago, obviously you had Krug, you had Grizzly coming up, you had like Jack Ashawn in Providence, who people were all hyped up about. And
Yeah.
even around the league, it was like, oh, the puck, small puck moving, elusive defenseman. And it's like, that's not really working. Like a guy like Lane Hudson at BU, I'm very, very, very curious to see what he becomes when he gets to the NHL level, because they're going out of style. You talk to NHL scouts all the time, and it's like the smaller guys, even if they're good, the bigger guys just are more applicable to today's NHL. So I'm curious what happens with that too.
Yeah, the problem is that I think even if they're really good offensively, those small defensemen are going to be liabilities defensively, and it's really
Yes.
difficult for them to outshine or outperform their defensive deficiencies with the offense that they're bringing. They have to be really, really good offensively to offset or even more than offset what they're going to give up defensively. And the fact that they're going to be able to be taken advantage of, especially in the playoffs. You see players that are undersized, D-men that are undersized, to really get picked on and exploited. And you've seen that with Torrey Krug in the past when he was with the Bruins. You've seen that with Matt Grzelcyk.
Mm-hmm.
Cale Makar is a little bigger than them. He's not that small, but he's a smaller defenseman. If you're that talented, I don't think it matters, right?
Yeah,
But
he's
like,
so fast.
but the players that you're mentioning, the Jackashawn, remember the guy Will Butcher, that
Yes,
came
I
into the
do.
league that everybody was saying was going to be great, and he kind of like just went nowhere. You have to be special offensively, I think, to be able to make it. Like it's easier for undersized forwards, the 5'8", 5'9" forwards, to survive and thrive in today's NHL. Because they're not as going to be as much of a liability defensively. I think defensemen, you can really make hay with them around the net and make them pay defensively, if they're not tremendous defensive players and with their sticks, with their technique, all that stuff. And even if they are, like Grizzly, I think is a pretty good defender, but he still gets picked on in the D zone, especially in the playoffs, and he has a hard time staying healthy. And that's the other thing I think with smaller defensemen too. So I think you're right, but I also think there's always going to be an old school hockey thing where they're just not going to believe that anybody, like I know it's an old school hockey mentality and notion when you talk to hockey people that anybody below 6 feet is just not going to hack it defensively as they
Yeah.
should in the NHL. And for so
Yes,
long
yes.
they just didn't exist that I think they're never going to believe. I remember having arguments with Mike Milbury about that when Krug was with the Bruins. Because he's like, you can't be under 6 feet tall and survive in the NHL on defense. You just can't do it. And there's a ton of hockey people that believe that to this day.
Oh yeah, and the thing with Krug was he was strong, he was stocky. He
Yeah.
could lay big hits and like that. I think that helped him. I haven't watched a ton of him in St. Louis. I know his production's down. I know that team is just bad situation. It has been. I mean, like and it's funny. Like you look back to that. And I don't want to get too far off track here, but like remember, like they let Petrangelo go, who
Yep.
went to Vegas, won a cup, has been pretty solid, and they opted for Krug, who I think was a teeny bit cheaper than Petrangelo, which didn't make a ton of sense because you're
No.
replacing your captain, who was a two-way force, with like a very offensive-minded, fine in his own zone, but smaller defenseman. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, it was good times.
The
So, yeah, I
The
agree.
Bruins
Good move
read
by the
that one
Bruins.
right, and I think
Oh,
ultimately, if
yeah.
they walk away from Debrusk, they're gonna be, credited for reading this one correctly too, because I just don't think he's gonna be worth whatever the money is that he gets approaching free agency, and I just don't think the Bruins are gonna be willing to, spend that kind of capital on him, and I think rightfully so. They're gonna have to replace his offense somehow, and some of the skill level that he brings and the speed that he brings, but like, if he's coming off a year like he's having right now and things don't change, like you're not getting it out of him either. So, you might as well move on to somebody else.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, let's crack into the mailbag. I don't know if you have discussed what's wrong with the Bruins 3-on-3 in overtime, but it certainly needs to be discussed. Their record in OT is bad. Jim Montgomery actually said it was 2-6 yesterday when we asked him about it. They need to fix that to be successful, especially in the playoffs. That's from Jim Connors via the Facebook fan page. And, obviously the Debrusk play that we're talking about going way high and wide with the shot and that turning into a rush the other way for the Kaprizov game winner is the latest issue. But 2-6 in overtime. There's been some overtimes where they just don't even get a shot on net, get the puck. I remember there was one overtime in Tampa Bay, a few weeks ago where I think they got outshot like 6-0 in overtime before they lost. And it was just bad. They did not look good at all. And they just looked like they were, they looked like there was a bunch of older players just toying around and playing keep away with a bunch of younger hockey players on the ice.
Yes.
At times they don't look fast enough. They certainly, I don't think, value the puck at times. It's not something they've practiced this year, which I think has been a problem. And I was glad to see they actually were practicing the 3-on-3 OT at practice yesterday before they left for the road trip. So I think Jim Montgomery is now realizing that that's something they need to at least practice a little bit. work on if they're going to play man to man, come up with some plays that they can have to make in 3-on-3 OT with the combos they put out there. But at the end of the day, like I think there's sometimes a lack of speed. Like the Bruins have some fast players, but I think in general they're not the fastest team in the league, and I think that gets exposed in 3-on-3 overtime a lot. And I don't know how much they're going to be able to improve that. You know, maybe incrementally they will, but I don't know. I don't know if this is going to ever be a great overtime team compared to some of the other teams and the personnel that they have in the league.
They're slow. They're slow. That's exactly what it is. They are slow. They have slow personnel. They're not a fast team, so they're not built for to be successful in a 3-on-3. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. I agree with you. They got to practice it. You got to have plays. You've got to somehow find a way to make your lack of speed be able to compete. Like, do you drop just Hail Marys? Do you hang someone? Like, there are things you can do.
Yeah,
but like you're just not like that. It comes down to that, and I think that's an issue for the playoffs. Though, like what I think his name was Jim mentioned, like I'm not as concerned about that for the playoffs solely because you're not doing 3-on-3.
No, it's not going to exist in the playoffs, so that part's fine.
And I think their heaviness can help them. They just need to utilize it more. You need to hit more. Like they're a heavy team. They should be a heavier team than they are, but they have the personnel to be heavy. They do not have the personnel to be fast. So like I think come the playoffs, I'm fine with that. And I will also say this. I think the Bruins checked yesterday. What are they, like third in the NHL? They're like, they're like 44 points. Vegas is 47. New York is 45. Yeah. If it can prevent them from winning the President's Trophy again, would that be the worst thing in the world? So let that be the silver lining. No President's Trophy. I'm okay with that. So yeah, but mainly it's just they're slow. They're a slow team, and that's that.
No, I think it would behoove them to get a little bit better at the 3-on-3 OT to work on what they're going to do defensively, where they should be, get combos used to playing with each other and sort of they can come up with some little plays to help them win games. Like all that stuff, I think will help them a little bit in the short term. But like long term, I'm not super concerned about it. I think because it's not going to be a scenario they're going to see in the playoffs, so it really doesn't matter. The one thing I would say is that they should also practice it a little bit more because they're going to be in it a lot. This is a team that does not separate from other teams offensively. There are a lot of white-knuckle games in the third period, a lot of white-knuckle action going on in the third where they're just hanging on to a lead at the end, which is going to turn into overtime a lot, because they're not good at closing out teams with a 1-goal lead in the third period either. So it's something they should work on getting better at in the regular season, simply because they are going to be in overtime a lot because that's the kind of team that they are, where they're playing in a lot of 3-2, 2-1 games, where it's probably inevitably going to go to overtime where they're trying to get the extra point. But do I think it's vital that they improve that? Do I think their existence is going to rely on that? No. I think the bigger issue and the bigger problem that I see is them allowing goals in the last few minutes of games when it turns into like just hand-to-hand combat around the net. When they're trying to protect a 1-goal lead and they're getting pushed around and they're getting scored on. And it's getting to the point now where other teams smell blood and understand that if they push hard against the Bruins late in the game, they're going to get that tying goal. And that is going to hurt them in the playoffs. And that is going to be they're ultimately their undoing, I think, if they can't improve that.
Yeah, I completely agree. The only other scenario I could see in which like this would really screw them is if they plummet and the last day of the season is, you got to win or you're out of the playoffs and it goes to overtime and it's like, oh, well, no playoffs this year. But I agree.
Well, put it this way, Evan. If the point, the where they are right now in the standings, if they are scratching and clawing to get in the playoffs the last game of the season, they do not deserve to make the playoffs.
No, they don't. I agree. It's the 2011 Red Sox. I agree with that. That's my thing. And you hit it there. Like they don't separate well from teams and they blow leads in the third because they just get hemmed in their own zone for like 10 minutes. Or the back half of the period. And I think like if you're in your own zone enough, you can be great defensively. A team is going to score. Like if you're in your own zone that long, like they're going to break through. Shots are, they're going to find ways to score. The guys in the NHL are too good, especially against like Kaprizov, Boldy, and Eriksson Ek. By the way, shout out to Matt Boldy. from Millis. But yeah, so to me, like, I agree. So that would be my. But yeah, the nightmare scenario I don't think will happen. That would be I agree. If it comes down to the last game of the season for them to get in the playoffs, lose. You don't deserve it. So I'm with you there.
No, I don't think it will. And my greater view of this entire season continues to be that they're a transition team, and that, if they get into the playoffs and they win a round or two, great. I don't think they should be going for broke this year. I don't think they should be, going all in, trading, tons of assets. I think they should probably be looking more to trade away assets and build back some of their prospects, draft picks, like all that stuff, like Debrusk that we talked about. And then, get experience for the younger players. They have a good enough core to get into the playoffs anyway. Like, do all that stuff, but not, I don't put it this way, I don't feel the same level of panic that a lot of Bruins fans do about, we need to fix this, we need to fix that, we need to add this player, we need to do this, like, this is going to be a disaster. Like, no, this is a season where they realistically are not going to win the cup. Like, if they have the team that they have, even if they add a piece, is not going to be cup worthy. I don't think they have a 2-month cup run in them. I think this is a team that is going to be, be a good playoff team, get into the playoffs, maybe win a round or two, get valuable experience in the playoffs for the younger players that they've integrated into the lineup, and, sort of pivot and go with the next group, next year and beyond, as they can add some pieces because they have cap space. I think in the greater scheme of things, I hate to use the term bridge year because I think it's overused, but I think that kind of is what this season is, in a lot, because of the players that left, because of the players they brought in and the situation that they're in. But so, like, I don't think anybody should be overly concerned about any of this stuff, because I think at the end of the year, the fact that they're, where they are in the standings is an overwhelming positive and was unexpected.
It's also a development year. You hit it there.
Yeah.
Like, can Patra stay in an NHL season and grow, which he has so far? I know he's the World Juniors right now, but he's enduring at a full season. Can Johnny Beecher be a serviceable fourth line center? Yes. Can Charlie Coyle, who's looked, I think, awesome this year,
I agree,
can he continue to be a top 6 center? So far, he's looked like one. I know the production hasn't been there the last couple games, but the overall game has been, his overall good game has been. So to me, I look at it from that lens of, like, this year is about kind of building for the next bunch of years where you're going to have more cap space and
Yep.
younger guys are coming up, guys like Lowry. So yeah, I agree. I'm not panicking. They are going to have their bumps. They're going to have their slumps. I don't mean to be Dr. Seuss, but, like, it just that's what the season's going to be, and that's okay.
I mean, it's appropriate for you to be Dr. Seuss when you're in your childhood bedroom with your Wiggle sheet. So, like, I think
Exactly.
you go for it. Green eggs and ham for everybody at Christmas time.
I am. There's got to be a Dr. Seuss book in here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but
I'm sure the places you will go is in that room somewhere. I have zero question. You probably got that for high school graduation. I have zero doubts.
I probably did.
That. All right, let's go. Looking ahead to the playoffs, assuming the Bruins qualify, which I think Evan and I both agree they probably will, or they should.
We do have Factor Meals to help us out. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit when it does get busy, when it does get crazy, when we do need a quick meal. They fuel you up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Takes less than 2 minutes to cook them. They're fresh, never frozen, meals ready in 2 minutes, like I said. They have calorie-conscious options, going upscale with some of the things they're offering now, like surf and surf meal options, roasted garlic filet mignon, and shrimp and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon, which is, like, right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff I'm all about. So it's got everything for everybody. There's 34 plus chef prepared, dietitian approved weekly options for meals. You can get snacks, you can get breakfast items. Like, it's a great deal. So if you want to get Factor Meals, go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use the code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. It's a great deal. I've tried it. It's fantastic. I recommend it to you. We love these ready to make meal kits, especially when we're on the go with our kids. So one more time, that's factormeals.com/Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. You won't be sorry if you go to Factor Meals. It gets the Haggs thumbs up seal of approval.
Who will the 4 centers be for game 1? And that's from JCH3717 on Twitter.
I will say Elias Lindholm, Connor McDavid. No.
Lindholm.
I will I will go with it'll be Zaka, Coyle. And I know that's like bland. I know
Would
it's
you
not
say
fun.
you cut out Zaka Coyle?
Zaka, Coyle, Patra, Beecher. I think
Yeah.
those will be the four. And
Yeah.
again, like to go into the playoffs with two young centers, again, if you're going for a cup, that's a hard thing to sell. And I know they will be going for a cup. I'm not saying they aren't, but at the same time, like you just hit, like I think it's good experience for guys like Patra and Beecher to be centers in the playoffs. And like I'm not putting Patra on the wing. And like, is Geeky going to be the third line center? I mean, he's probably a little maybe more stable, but I think those are the four. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the only, as you referenced, I think the only deviation would be Geeky as the third line center. But I think Geeky has shown that he can play wing and that he actually plays really well with Patra
Yeah.
as a duo. So, I think I think it would be very valuable to get Patra some playing time in the playoffs and experience in the playoffs. Just like I think World Juniors is great for his development. I think getting playoff experience is going to be extremely important for his development at the end of the year. So I would put him in there. I think this is, obviously there's a balance between urgency, winning playoffs, competitively putting the best team out there in the best spot to win, like all that stuff. But I just think some decisions organizationally this year should be made about player development, about what's best long term for the organization and for the players, and what's going to put them in a position to be like potentially great for a 5-year run in the near future. And I think getting Patra some playing time at the center position will do that, and I think it's important. So that would be I think it's Zaka, Coyle, Patra, and Beecher. I don't think Lindholm is a realistic trade target for the Bruins. I just don't. I don't think any big ticket item is a realistic trade target for the Bruins because they don't have first round picks. They don't have second round picks. They're not going to trade Matt Patra. They're not going to trade Mason Lowry. They're not going to trade their, the guys that have risen to the top of their prospect pool. Maybe they trade a Fabian Lysell who is having some, developmental bumps in Providence and may become a player that's a prospect that has value as a trade chip rather than a player that you feel like is ever going to develop with you organizationally. And I think we're starting to hit that territory a little bit with him where, I was at Finn played before the Providence Bruins games last weekend. So I was down there for that Syracuse Bruins game where I guess Ryan Mougenel criticized Lysell pretty heavily after the game was over. But I was there with Finn played before the warm-ups on the ice with his Crimson teammates, and I watched the game. He sniped one early in the game. The team looked great. He had a great goal. Everything looked good. And then it kind of fell apart after that. And, Mougenel talked about it afterwards and how, maybe he's not playing the team game like he needs to consistently, and that's been a problem. But the talent is there. The goal was an elite goal scorer's goal. It was nice. So he's still playing pretty well, and the numbers are pretty good. So, maybe that's a guy that becomes a trade chip for somebody, but he's not going to get you Elias Lindholm. You need more than that to make a trade like that for a top tier NHL player that's going to be a highly sought after rental, especially if you have designs on wanting to keep that player long term. It's going to cost you a lot more than that. The Bruins just don't have the assets to make that kind of trade.
And like with Lysell, I think his trade values you hit on there has gone down to the point where, I think a year or two ago, I think you could have, Lysell and Lysell is the main centerpiece for a guy like Elias Lindholm. Now I don't think that's the case. I think maybe he's in a deal. Maybe I'm undervaluing him a ton, but I just don't see him as the trade chip we used to view him as. The other thing I will add is I agree with you. They're not going to make a big move. And I don't want them to go out and get another middle six center. You don't need that. You've got Zaka, you've got Coyle, you're fine there. You don't need another, you've got Geeky. You don't need another one of those guys. And I agree. I think it's going to be, they're going to stick with who they got. If they make any moves, it's going to be, a veteran winger who can reliably put up, 30 points a season, maybe like someone like that. Like Conor Ryan the other day mentioned, and I don't think he meant this as like a guy to go after, but a guy that they went after in the past, like a Marcus Johansson, that kind of a player. Maybe that's what they do to supplement the roster. But again, they don't have the pieces to make a big move.
I'd like less Johansson, more big, nasty fourth line Milan Lucic replacement type player. I think that's more
fair.
along the lines of what they should be looking at this point. Because I just don't think, you talk about them playing, a little bit physical, but I just don't think they have the personnel to play physical either, and they need more to play that way. And they need a player like him because they kind of game planned before the season started that they were going to have a presence like Lucic this season, and the fact that they don't have it, they're missing that big time. So I think that's something they're going to need to get, and they certainly, I think, should get a nasty, big, strong defenseman around the net, a guy that cleans house, clears bodies, plays with an attitude. I think they need that kind of player too. Like an Adam McQuaid type, honestly, would be like really good. Like that kind of a player, I think they
Radko Gudas.
Yeah, well, he would be the ideal. I don't know that they're going to get him, but like somebody like that for sure. And I think those are bigger needs. Like for this particular season, I think scoring wise, I think they're going to be okay. I think they've made peace this year that they're not going to be the high scoring team they were last year. They're going to be kind of middle of the road, and they're going to have to rely a lot on Pastrnak and Marchand to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And I think, they're okay with that. Rather than adding somebody like that, but we'll see. Terry O'Reilly is secretly Santa, isn't he? I mean, think about it. That's from Michael Barry on the Facebook fan page. I included that because it's the centennial year, and I just love Terry O'Reilly.
Yes.
So Merry Christmas to Terry O'Reilly and all the Bruins centennial greats out there. It's been great to see all you guys at the Garden this year. Unfortunately, all the scoring depends on Pasta and Marshy. They can't do it all. Third and fourth lines just can't do it. That's from Johnny Mildner on the Facebook fan page, and then we just discussed that. That's a good comment, and it's very true. But I think I feel like third and fourth line wise, when the third line has been JVR, Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, I thought it was outstanding.
Yeah.
I think the problem is maybe they don't have enough top six pieces to make that their third line. Where it becomes a challenge. And Johnny Beecher's shown a little bit offensively this year. I think there's a little bit more to get out of him offensively. And I think Morgan Geekie, I think, can provide a little bit more offensively. I think there's some players that are in that mix third and fourth line wise when they're in there that I think you're going to see a little bit more offense from in the second half of the year. So I think they can kind of rely on that. I don't know how much of a need that's going to be.
Your viewpoint's interesting on, because it's interesting when I've been thinking lately, they do need someone up front that can, reliably put a puck in the net here and there. But your theory is interesting in the sense that they have the guys can find a way to get, 3-4 goals a game in the playoffs. They need to focus more on their strength and strengthening their strength. And I like that idea. The idea of, add a defenseman who's mean and nasty, or add, a forward on the fourth line who can, put guys through the glass. I don't hate that. That's why, I'm open to any additions you can make to this team.
Yep.
I just don't want them giving up too many future assets unless, if you could find a way to get a Lindholm long term, then okay, fine. But if it's a rental piece, like a Bertuzzi or an Orlov, which Sweeney doesn't typically do, by the way. Last year was sort of a one-off with that stuff. But even then, I agree with you. I think if you can strengthen your strengths, that's why, the whole idea of trading a goalie doesn't make any sense to me, because your strength is your goalies.
Yeah.
I think that.
Yeah, this team is built on defense and goaltending. It's not going to be an offensive juggernaut. I think adding a little more offense is okay, but I'd rather they focus on what they do well and making sure they're as good as they can possibly be at doing those things, and just making peace with who and what they are. And I think they have. I think they understood that this was not going to be like a record-breaking year offensively, and that they were going to play a lot of one-goal games, and it was going to be close, and that they were going to have to play great defense, like great rush defense, great defense in their own zone, great textbook fundamental defense ahead of like elite goaltending. And I think for the most part, it's been that. And, Jim Montgomery's been very happy, I think, notably so with the team lately, much more positive than he was earlier in the year. And I think it's because they're playing better defensively for the most part, by and large. And I think you're starting to see improvements where they, they're going to be playing a successful brand of hockey when they get to the playoffs. It may not mean that they're going to, go all the way to the Cup final, but I think they'll be at least playing playoff style hockey when they get there. Are they teaching Jake Debrusk to hit the net when shooting the puck? That's from Mark Cohn 15. I think we have adequately addressed that one already.
We've done a lot to Debrusk.
Hopefully they are teaching Jake Debrusk to hit the net because going back to what we said before, the one thing I would say is that you tell a guy like Jake Debrusk, look, if you're going to take that shot, I don't want to put the governor on you offensively and try to limit you and tell you what to do as a creative offensive player that, has scored close to 30 goals in the season in this league. But if you're going to take that shot, you need to hit the net,
That's all we ask.
Don't hit the net. You're going to invite the wrath of the coach and everybody else in the fan base and all that. So you got to hit the net. I said, I wrote this down, 4 goals in 29 games, on a pace for 11 goals and 30 points this season for Jake Debrusk. Just not even close to good enough.
No.
Is it an NHL policy that if you get one brother, you get the other brother, i.e. Morgan Geekie? If it isn't, it should be. And that's from Place to Be Place on Twitter. And this plays into Morgan Geekie's younger brother, Conor Geekie, playing with Patra on Team Canada at the World Junior Tournament, which will make it all the more interesting for Bruins fans. Certainly for Morgan Geekie, it'll make it interesting to watch. But I think for Bruins fans as well, being able to watch Patra at the World Juniors will make it a fun tournament and will make it very interesting from a Bruins perspective to see how he does. In the first practice, he was centering the top line with Conor Geekie on his wing. So that's going to be really interesting. And Conor Geekie, obviously a former first-round pick of the Arizona Coyotes, has a future in the NHL. So, of course, if it were an NHL policy that you get one brother to get the other brother, Bruins fans would be very happy about that.
I mean, look, it happened with the Richies. Both Richie brothers. Right. I mean, let's continue to do it.
I'd rather have the Geekies than the Richies.
I would agree with you there. I just looked it up and I didn't realize this. Conor Geekie is 6'4".
Yeah, he's big.
That would be someone fun to have in your top 9.
Yep.
Get more brothers. I mean, I'm all for it. Like you should be able to get it's like in college recruiting, like the Haggs brothers. You get both, or like the Hughes. They all go to Michigan. So like, I would entertain it. Maybe a little rule change. Get different brothers in the league. Why not?
In my generation, it was the Eves brothers at BC who didn't play for dad and went to go play for Jerry York instead, which I always thought was interesting.
Right, that's right, Patrick Eves. I forgot about that.
And,
You're right.
Ben Eves, his older brother. Yeah, they were both.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I always thought that was like an interesting dynamic, like that didn't actually get reported on enough. That like their dad was a big time college hockey coach, and they ended up going to play for somebody else instead of their dad. I always thought that was interesting.
Well, Jerry Keith, his son Owen, committed to BU, and does he's like, I've talked to him about it. He's like, I knew I could never play for my dad, and it was just like that was that. And I think that's easy. I think it must be easier as a kid to just say I can't play for you, and have it be agreed upon. Because I feel like if he was like, oh, I'm deciding between Northeastern and BU, and I pick BU, it's like, oh, that's kind of just like that's tough to do, to be like, Dad, sorry, but I'm going to choose somewhere else. But to just be like, I'm not going there no matter what, I think is the easiest thing to do if you are having any second thoughts about going anywhere else. So, yeah, I thought that was funny.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally interesting, but it's funny how like you'll see some kids that will like adamantly play for their dad no matter where their dad goes, and then other ones are like, nope, not playing for him. Had enough car rides home after tough games to not want to do that in college. All right, last question, why on earth did Monty put Debrusk and Gretzky? Of course, he's talking about Grzelcyk, not Gretzky there, or she is talking about. Why on earth did Monty put Debrusk and Gretzky out on a very important play in overtime? Just like last year when he kept putting Ullmark in net when he should have played Swayman. We lost both times. And angry face emoji at the end of that from Mary Sullivan on the Facebook fan page. They could have used Gretzky in the 3-on-3 overtime.
Yeah, I would have liked it. Can he come off the TNT panel and play a little hockey for them?
I'd even take Biz maybe.
Yeah, Biz would be good. Biz would add some snarl to that fourth line. I don't hate him putting them out there because, as we mentioned, 3-on-3 is fast.
Who are your best
Now,
skaters?
Jake Debrusk is not, he didn't do the right thing puck possession wise, but Grzelcyk is a good puck possession defenseman, and he's quick and he's a good skater. I'm not opposed to that. I know
Also not having a good season though. I would say
so that's the thing. That's the thing is like that McAvoy-Grzelcyk pairing has not been anywhere near as good as it has been in the past. So like,
nope.
I agree. But from the intangible perspective, from the just, on paper, he's quick. That's real. I mean, I think that's the big reason. Maybe it speaks to a need to have more guys who are big and can skate, which again, you got Low Ryan in the system who's coming up, who at some point is going to stick in the NHL. But yeah, I wasn't super opposed to that. The Grzelcyk thing is interesting. We haven't really hit on it at all on like whether or not to trade him.
Yeah.
I put him in the same category as Debrusk of if you get a good return for him, deal him. Like he has value. But if you're not going to get a good return for him, then probably not the best move, I think. But that's just me.
I mean, I think you could get something for him, even
yes,
though
I think he has value.
His value has lowered this year, certainly. He's not having a great season. He's not as even as valued as he probably was last summer from an asset standpoint, but he's still a puck moving defenseman that's proven he can play top 4 minutes in the NHL. And I think there's value there across the league, and he's not super expensive on the contract he has either, given that he can play those kind of roles. So I think he would have some kind of value. And the bigger problem with him is just that, he's going to start being a player that I don't think is going to be like always a regular in the lineup because other young defensemen are coming up through the system like Mason Lowry that are going to demand playing time and that you're going to want to play instead. Just by virtue of the fact that he's a bigger, stronger guy in the D zone, and eventually he's going to be a better defender at the NHL level in his own end than Matt Grzelcyk could be, just by virtue of his physical assets. I think that's going to be, something that it's Matt Grzelcyk's not going to be able to fight that one.
No,
being a 5'8", 5'9", 170-pound guy versus a guy that's 6'3", 210. That's just. That's just not a winning battle ever that he's going to have. So I think that part of and the interesting thing about both Debrusk and Grzelcyk is part of the reason that they're not playing up to par this year and they're not playing up to the level of their abilities. Is it because that they feel like the writing is on the wall for them, that they're not going to be here long term and they're having difficulty with that? Is that part of what's going on with this team right now and sort of where they're at and, the prospects coming up, the salary cap, their contractual situations, like all that stuff. These guys are human beings, they're going to be affected by things like this and thinking about their future and everything else. Is that part of the reason that they're struggling a little bit? And I think the answer could be yes for both. And I think it's a situation that bears watching because both of them have not played well this year and because their situation and their station on the team is kind of in it's a fluid situation right now. It's not determined or defined.
I agree with you, and I am curious to see how it plays out. I go back to though. I think Grzelcyk has value. Like I'm confident that
they both
has
do.
value. They do, and I don't think you can package them together to get like a better player. I don't think that's going to work. But like to me, I go back to, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. I would love to see them get back into the first or second round next year. Now I don't know if either of those guys can get you into the first round.
Yeah,
but they can probably get you in the second. Like, I would not hate that. I really wouldn't. And I know you can say what you want about them drafting, but you need to breathe a little life in the prospect pool, stuff like that. And I would not hate that idea. If you could, because I go back to like, I don't know if I've said this to you, but like with the Debrusk stuff, right? People always say, oh, you need to do like a Zaka deal. Trade Debrusk for a guy with high potential, high ceiling who hasn't met his expectations. That's Jake Debrusk.
Yeah.
That is Jake Debrusk. Like, I think in a deal like that, Debrusk would be Zaka, and you would be trading him for a proven commodity with a low ceiling, like an Eric Halla. So like, yeah. So I go back and forth on this. But yeah, the Grizzly thing, I'm fine with him in overtime and all that stuff. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that.
You're going to win some, you're going to lose some in overtime. I would say the whole team has not been great in overtime. So let's not.
Yeah, it's been a full team effort.
let's not kill Debrusk and Grizzly for the failings of many this year when it comes to the Boston Bruins in overtime. I think Don Sweeney definitely will hope that there's maybe a first or a second round pick under the Christmas tree this year. Evan, I hope you have a great holiday season. Thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate it on this mailbag edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Thank you to our sponsors, FanDuel Sportsbook. $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Easy app to download. Spreads, player props, over-unders, so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get things going now as we get towards NFL playoffs, NBA on Christmas. Who doesn't want to get some FanDuel action going on Christmas with the NBA? And also very respectful of the NHL holiday break. Day before Christmas, Christmas, and the day after Christmas. No games, no practices. Go enjoy your family. I love that.
I think it's a good thing.
It is. Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Thanks for your sponsorship. Too busy to cook. $550 per serving, ready in 2 minutes. Just throw them in the microwave. They're delicious. Go to factormeals.com and use the code HAGS. Go to factormeals.com/HAGS50 and use the code HAGS50 to get 50% off your first box. Evan, have a great holiday, buddy.
You too.
It was great seeing your Wiggle sheets. I'm going to order some of those for Finn if I can find them retro vintage on eBay.